Reggie White, Brett Favre.
Welcome to the Hall of Teams, the podcast where sports legends live again. I'm your host, Kirk Jensen, and today we turn to the smallest city in the National Football League with the biggest legacy in the game. From a town on the edge of Lake Michigan to Lambeau Field, where legends are carved in frozen tundra by iron cleats. In this episode, we follow the Packers, built by a community, forced out of the league, then returned and forged into a dynasty. For years, I thought like so many that Green Bay was a city of millions, just like every other NFL team. But I was wrong by a factor of more than 10. The Packers play in a city with a population of just over 100,000. To put that in perspective, globally in England, that's Birkenhead. In France, Caen. In Canada, Thunder Bay. In Australia, Rockingham. None of them are close to hosting a big league professional franchise. Yet, Green Bay does. A team born from a packing company, forged through community, sustained by its people. That's why in Green Bay, you don't have a fan base. You have neighbors. Chapter 1. Born in Wisconsin's Heartland. To understand the legend, you must return to where it began. In the early 1900s, Green Bay, Wisconsin was a paper mill town. Its streets smelled of industry, sawdust from lumber yards, the tang of the packing plants, and the smoke from factory stacks rising above modest neighborhoods. It was a place defined by work, grit, and a simple rhythm of life. Two men, Earl Curly Lambeau and George Calhoun, had an idea that seemed improbable. Lambeau, a former high school star who had briefly attended Notre Dame under Knute Rockne, and Calhoun, sports editor of the Green Bay Press-Gazette, dreamed of starting a football team that could stand against the giants from the big cities. But they had no field, no uniforms, no salaries to offer. But what they did have was ambition and connections. Lambeau worked for the Indian Packing Company, a local firm that canned meat for military rations. He persuaded them to provide a $500 sponsorship for equipment in exchange for naming rights. And so, the Green Bay Packers were born. The first uniforms rough but practical. Navy blue wool jerseys, canvas pants, leather helmets, and striped socks. The look wasn't born of design, but of necessity. Bought with the team's $500 sponsorship and whatever surplus gear was available. It wasn't until the 1950s that the Packers adopted green and gold, colors chosen to stand apart from rivals like Chicago's Navy and Notre Dame's blue, while tying symbolically to Wisconsin itself, the forests, the fields, and the green in Green Bay. The Packers began playing at Hagmeister Park. Fans paid coins into a past hat to keep the team afloat. Local kids climbed trees for a free view. From the beginning, the Packers were not just entertainment. They were family, with the identity of the town itself, daring to dream bigger than its borders. And that dream, green, gold, and stitched with pride, would grow into a dynasty. Trivia from the Hall. Stock in the game. Welcome to Trivia from the Hall, where we spotlight the strange, surprising, and significant stories that shape the world of sport. Walk into homes across Wisconsin, and you'll often see it framed on the wall, a Green Bay Packers stock certificate. It doesn't pay dividends, it can't be resold on Wall Street, and it carries no real financial power. But for fans, it's a badge of belonging, a piece of paper that declares, I am part of the team. Since the first sale in 1923, stock offerings have saved the Packers more than once. Thousands of ordinary fans bought in, not to profit, but to keep the franchise alive. The most recent sale in 2021 raised over $64 million and welcomed more than 175,000 new owners from all 50 states and even overseas. Each stock certificate stands as a reminder that Green Bay isn't just cheered by fans, it's owned by them. Chapter 2: When Others Fell, Packers Endured. The early 1920s were chaotic for professional football. Teams came and went in the blink of an eye. The Rock Island Independents, the Canton Bulldogs, the Hammond Pros. Names that once meant something, but faded into history. And Green Bay was an eyelash away from joining them. In 1921, the Packers were admitted into the young NFL, then still formerly called the American Professional Football Association, or the APFA. But almost as quickly as they entered, disaster struck. That fall, in a non-league exhibition game in St. Louis, Green Bay used ineligible players, and the league revoked their franchise on the spot. For most small towns, that would have been the end. But Curly Lambeau would not let go. He traveled, he argued, pleaded his case to league officials, and with the backing of local businessmen, the Packers were reinstated the very next year. It was an early reminder that survival wasn't about talents alone. It was about determination and the trust of the fans. And you have to consider, Lambeau wasn't fighting because he knew the team would be one day worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He was fighting for the town, he was fighting for their fans, and he was fighting to keep the team in Green Bay. Because in Green Bay, football is more than a game. Professional football itself was still finding its place. College football ruled the headlines. Big college stadiums were filled with tens of thousands of fans, while the pros were dismissed as rowdy and disorganized. But in Green Bay, it was different. Businesses closed early on game day so workers could make kickoff. Sundays became sacred, not just for church, but for Packers football. And rivalries began to spark, and none greater than with George Halas and his Chicago Bears. The City Slickers from Chicago against the Mill Workers from Wisconsin. Every clash was more than a game. It was pride against pride. And to this day, the Packers and Bears rivalry remains the oldest and fiercest in the NFL. Trivia from the Hall. The making of an icon, the Packers G. Few logos in sports are as instantly recognizable as a Green Bay Packers G. It was created in 1961 by John Gordon, an assistant equipment manager who was also a young art student at nearby St. Norbert College. Working at the request of Gerald "Dad" Brazier and under the guidance of Vince Lombardi, Gordon was asked to design a simple mark, a G, inside the shape of a football.
What happened was, I walked into work and there was no one there. Dad came down from his meeting with Lombardi with a piece of paper in his hand. And he said that Lombardi wants a logo. I'm not sure what the words were, but he wants a logo, and it's going to be a G on a football shape.
Green Bay Packers' own historian Cliff Crystal says there are 2 or 3 versions of the story floating around about who designed the original G. But after talking with different artists about its symmetry and precision, Crystal believes it had to have come from an artist's hand. And Gordon's version remains the most plausible. Gordon sketched well into the night, and within 24 hours, he brought his design to Dad Brazier.
So this is the shape I brought in that morning to Dad Brazier, the equipment manager, who took it to Vince Lombardi, and it was immediately okayed.
Within months, the new logo appeared on the Packers helmets, and by season's end, it was shining under championship lights. Over time, fans have tried to attach extra meaning to it, claiming the G stood for greatness. but the reality is simpler. It stands for Green Bay, a simple letter that defined a team, a town, and a tradition. Chapter 3: Saved by the Town, Crowned by the League. During the Depression, Curly Lambeau's Packers were more than survivors. They were innovators, building the first dynasty of the NFL. The 1929 season changed everything. Curly Lambeau's Packers went undefeated, 12-0-1, and allowed just 22 points all season. In those days, there were no playoffs. The teams with the best record was the champion, and Green Bay stood at that summit. For a town of then 30,000, it was a civic earthquake. Storefronts painted their windows green and gold. The Green Bay Press-Gazette ran a bold front-page headline. Kids walked to school, tossing scuffed leather footballs, imagining themselves as Johnny Blood, the dazzling halfback, whose off-field antics were as legendary as his runs of brilliance. He was a character in every sense of the word, once hitchhiking on the back of a milk truck to make a road game. Another time, sneaking into Notre Dame's football locker room just to hear Knute Rockne deliver his pregame speech. And the titles didn't stop in 1929. The Packers repeated in 1930 and 1931, becoming NFL's first three-time consecutive champions. It was a record so staggering that would only be matched by Lombardi's Packers 30 years later. Chapter 4: The Lombardi Era. When Vince Lombardi arrived in 1959, the Packers were adrift, a storied name sinking into mediocrity. His first words to the players set the tone. "Gentlemen, we are going to relentlessly chase perfection, and we will catch excellence along the way." From that day, Lombardi's pursuit of perfection reshaped everything. Where mistakes were dissected, fundamentals repeated endlessly. His practices were grueling crucibles. The famed Packer sweep was drilled until it became not just a play, but muscle memory. Players spoke of practices that were harder than games. Bart Starr, their star quarterback, later recalled, "He demanded so much in practice that the games on Sunday felt like a relief." The results came fast. In 1961, the Packers were champions, and again in 62, 65, and 66. And then in 67 came the NFL championship game against the Dallas Cowboys, famously called the Ice Bowl. Minus 13 Fahrenheit or minus 25 Celsius, with winds cutting the chill to nearly minus 50. Were exposed. With 16 seconds left in the game, the Packers trailed Dallas 17-14. The Packers won, and later on went on to defeat the AFL champion Oakland Raiders in Super Bowl II. 5 titles in 7 years. The first 2 Super Bowls, a dynasty of the Lombardi discipline. Green Bay didn't just win games. They redefined excellence as a way of life. Trivia from the Hall, from Champion's Prize to Lombardi's legacy. The NFL's greatest prize, the Super Bowl trophy, was renamed the Lombardi Trophy in 1971, just months after Vince Lombardi's death. After his passing at age 57, the league moved to honor the man who made winning its highest art. Today, when players dream of lifting the Lombardi Trophy, they are reaching not just for silver, but for a standard: preparation, unity, and relentless pursuit of greatness. Few honors in sports carry such permanence. A man's name forever welded to glory. Chapter 5: The Rebirth of Green Bay. When Vince Lombardi left in 1969, he left behind a dynasty. The 1970s and 80s would become the Packers' wilderness years. Coaches came and went, quarterbacks tried and failed to fill Bart Starr's shoes. The NFL was exploding in size, television reach, and money. while Green Bay seemed stuck in yesterday's playbook. But one thing never faltered: the fans. Lambeau still filled every Sunday, no matter how grim the standings. Parents passed down season tickets to their children like family heirlooms. Tailgates became as important as touchdowns, binding the community together even when victories were scarce. Then came 1992, and with it, a spark. General manager Ron Wolf traded for a little-used backup quarterback from Atlanta. His name? Brett Favre. Favre played with the joy of a kid in a backyard and the toughness of a steelworker. His arm could launch a ball into the stratosphere. Swagger electrified Lambeau. Every Sunday became unpredictable, thrilling, and alive again. 2 years later, the most sought-after free agent in football chose Green Bay. Reggie White, the Minister of Defense, stunned the league by signing with the Packers. "God told me to come here," White explained, and his arrival left no doubt. Green Bay was a contender again. Together with head coach Mike Holmgren, who brought discipline and the precision of the West Coast offense, Favre and White transformed the Packers into a juggernaut. Holmgren demanded sharp execution, telling his quarterback, "If you trust the system, the wins will come." Favre's fire, blended with Holmgren's structure, chaos, and order, working together as one. In 1996, the bill was complete. Green Bay stormed to Super Bowl 31, and on that stage, it wasn't just the stars who made history. Desmond Howard returned a kickoff 99 yards for a touchdown, ever to be named Super Bowl MVP. In 2010, at Super Bowl 45, Green Bay delivered another championship, restoring the Packers once more to the summit. Green Bay proved their story was still being written, and that greatness could thrive in any era of the NFL. Trivia from the Hall: the original Cheesehead. In Wisconsin, the term Cheesehead once stung, used by rival fans as an insult, a jab at the state's booming dairy culture. But Wisconsin fans took that insult and turned it into pride. In 1987, a Wisconsin man named Ralph Bruno grabbed a chunk of polyurethane foam, some left over from his mom's couch, and carved it into a wedge that looked like yellow-hued cheese. The next day, he sported it at a Milwaukee Brewers baseball game, and what started out as playful fun soon became a symbol of pride. Packers fans adopted it, and the Cheesehead hat became a staple for game days. Bright, quirky, and unmistakable. In 2023, the Packers even acquired the company behind it, Foamation.
The Packers organization has acquired Foam Nation Incorporated, the company responsible for creating the original Cheesehead hat, and have our first new products available today for sale. We look forward to
making the Cheesehead an official piece of the team's identity. From insult to innovation, a hat of foam that became a crown of fandom. Chapter 6: The Lambeau Legacy. Opened in 1957 as City Stadium, renamed in 1965 to honor Curly Lambeau, the Packers' home field is unlike any other. Lambeau Field is not just a stadium, it's a shrine to football itself. It is a place where steel bleachers froze to the skin. Fans stamped their feet against the cold, wrapped in hunting gear and wool blankets. Temperatures plunged, yet not a single ticket ever went unused. As one fan told the Milwaukee Journal, "It's not weather, it's Packers weather." But Lambeau's uniqueness is not just in its cold. Unlike modern arenas pushed to the edges of cities, Lambeau rises from a neighborhood. Just outside its gates, you'll find porches draped in team banners, driveways turned into tailgates, grills loaded with bratwursts, and strangers becoming family over a shared plate of curds. And then there's the famous Lambeau Leap. In 1993, safety Leroy Butler scored, sprinted to the stands, and launched himself into the waiting arms of Packer fans. the crowd history embraced by the very people who own the team. Visiting players and coaches speak of Lambeau with reverence. John Madden once said, "Lambeau Field is like the Vatican of football." Cowboys quarterback Tony Romo, a Wisconsin native, admitted, "Running out of that tunnel, it feels like the game of football belongs to the world, but especially to Green Bay." Through decades of change, Lambeau Field has been upgraded, yet never lost its soul, blanketing a century of football memories. From Lambeau's vision to Lombardi's dynasty, the Packers remain proof Green Bay is not just on the NFL map, it is its heartbeat. Chapter 7: Why They Matter. Some teams are built on money, some on markets, but the Packers were built on people. From Curly Lambeau's first stock sale to the frozen chants at Lambeau Field, Green Bay has never been just a team. It's been a promise, a legacy built on loyalty, hard work, and community, and a bond between players and fans, between the city and the team. And now, that bond is forever honored in the Hall of Teams. In the Hall of Teams, legends don't just live in the past. They rise again through you. This year, you decide who earns the title Team of the Year. It's more than a title. It's a legacy without borders. Across all sports, across time, and across the world. Want your team to win? Watch the episode, tap like, comment with #Team of the Year and your team's name. And don't forget to subscribe, because every voice and every vote counts. The team with the most likes, comments, and new subscribers will be crowned Team of the Year. Their logo will be immortalized on the Wall of Honor. And remember, you can watch the full episode on the Hall of Teams YouTube channel. Thanks for joining us on this legendary journey, from Green Bay's frozen tundra and hallowed Lambeau Field to Barcelona's sun-soaked streets and the monumental Camp Nou. Next time, we journey to Barcelona, a club whose colors carried more than victories. They carried the spirit of a people, a team that became a voice, a movement, a symbol. More than a club, més que un club. Until then, remember, behind every logo is a legacy, and behind every team, a tale worth telling. I'm Kirk Jensen, and this is the Hall of Teams.